successful collaboration, it looks like people are enjoying their time. They're not afraid to have difficult conversations, but they trust in the goodwill of the people collaborating, and everyone understands their role and is willing to participate to contribute to the best outcome of the group.
I think it is like we're in a very exciting time in redefining what is collaboration look like, and what does asynchronous collaboration looks like. Because I think that really democratizes opportunities around the world.
Clear shared understanding of the goal, a understanding of the resources that we have available, including the uniqueness of the people that are going to deliver it.
What do an executive and communications coach, a technology CEO, a medal-winning former Olympian, a retired Top Gun instructor, and an expert on empathy and emotional agency all have in common? Don't know? Probably loads of things, but today, two things very specifically that I'm interested in. One, they each have valuable insights on collaboration and teamwork. And two, they're sharing those insights with us today on this very special episode of Leading with Integrity. This week, it's International Leadership Week. So I am doing 5 episodes, 1 a day, starting today. Stick around at the end of this episode and I will run you through what else is coming this week. International Leadership Week is one of my favorite weeks of the year, which is probably no surprise to any long-time listener, but it's all about community and uniting leaders across the world, people who are passionate about leadership and raising the standard of it in workplaces and organizations everywhere. People like me, in other words, and I hope people like you, listener, as well. It's run by the Institute of Leadership, and every year they pick a different theme for the week. This year, it's all about collaborating for success. And I just love that theme this year. It is such an important one because ultimately the goal of any application of leadership is enabling an effective team, one that's working towards a common goal. And the core of that is all about collaboration. So what is the secret to that all-important collaboration? Is it clarity? Is it communication, trust, psychological safety, understanding your role, knowing the roles of others, inclusive behaviors? Is it, as a leader, ensuring that your people are seen, heard, and valued? Is it all of the above? Who knows? We'll find out this week, maybe even today. All of those things speak very much to the heart of modern leadership and what leading with integrity is all about. In fact, collaborate is one of the 5 pillars of the leading with integrity approach to leadership. So, as I say, I couldn't be more excited to get into this vital topic. And on that note, this week we're going to touch on many of those ideas and more. We'll be hearing from leaders and experts across the spectrum of life, career, industry, and backgrounds. And to launch us into the week, today we're going to explore this ILW.104 theme very specifically.
Welcome to the Leading with Integrity podcast. Leadership talk for the modern manager. With your host, David Hatch.
So I'm joined by 2 former guests today, Ira Lepanen, who you may remember from episode 55, which was way back in June last year. It seems like a decade ago now. And we talked then about empathy and emotional agency at work. I'm also joined by executive coach and communications expert David Bates, who is a more recent guest from episode 102, only a couple of weeks ago. So I'm sure you probably remember him a lot more easily. And today we're going to hear from Ira and Dave on their views about successful collaboration, what it looks like, and how leaders can best achieve it in their teams. And then for the final segment of the episode, I have a few more guests, and everyone's going to be answering my quick fire question, which is, what is the secret to successful collaboration? Those extra guests, you may recognize tech CEO and AI expert Denzel Eden from episode 99 last month. And then the final two guests you probably won't recognize because they are from future episodes that haven't come out yet. So you're getting a double bonus there, really, of being very on topic for International Leadership Week, and you're getting a sneak preview for some of the upcoming conversations that haven't been released yet. So those extra guests are Olympic medal-winning athlete, TEDx speaker, and executive coach Joey Lai, and then retired fighter pilot, former Top Gun instructor, previous commander of the US Navy display team, the Blue Angels, speaker, consultant, author, the list goes on, Captain George Dom. So it's going to be an interesting one. We're going to be going all over the place today. I'm really pleased that you're here with us. And yeah, I'm too excited. We're just going to have to dive straight in. I can't hold back any longer. Well, Dave, thank you so much for coming back so soon after your last appearance. That's much appreciated. It's great to have you back on Leading with Integrity.
Thank you. It's great to be back. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, me too. And today's topic, in honor of International Leadership Week 2024, is collaborating for success. So the first question I'll ask you, really just to get your thoughts on that as a theme, if you like. What do you think is the secret to successful collaboration, if there is one?
Yeah, I don't know that there is one secret, but I think that good collaboration requires at least two things. If I thought about it for longer, I might come up with different things. But the first thing is that I think we have to value other people and the contribution that they have to make. A lot of times leaders end up in a situation where they kind of just need smart people so they can tell them what to do. Like, that's kind of an oxymoron, but that's the behavior. Like, look, I just need to tell you what needs to be done so that you can go off and do it the way I would have done it. And that can work for a little while, but it doesn't necessarily value the thing that somebody uniquely brings, their perspective, their insight, their attitude, whatever those things are. When we're just doling out assignments so that we can get from point A to point B the way we expect to get there, we lose something in that, and it doesn't feel very collaborative. So understanding the value that they bring. I think then the second thing that is essential is that we have to invest in becoming better communicators. We are constantly seeking to be heard. And I think a lot of times we don't understand the essential model for communications. And when we don't understand that model, it gets in the way of our ability to get things done. How many times have you played the telephone game, right? I use an example in one of the talks I give of like, hey, let's meet on Monday at Starbucks for coffee at 10 a.m. And I go to Starbucks, and at 10 a.m., there I am. This isn't an ad for Starbucks, by the way, just so you know. But there I am at 10 a.m. and you're not there, but you're at Starbucks and it's 10 a.m. and I'm not there. Where are we? Oh, there's a Starbucks on every corner. We didn't agree on which Starbucks it was, or we didn't agree on which Monday it was, or, you know, just so simple things that can derail us. Imagine what happens when we're talking about organizational projects and things. There's no wonder that 70+% of organizational change initiatives fail. We can't even communicate with each other how we're going to get coffee. How are we going to get things done? So there's two parts of valuing each other, what we can bring, and being able to communicate effectively towards the goal that we have in mind that we share.
Yeah, other coffees are available, of course. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
As they would say on the BBC. Yeah.
Yes. And often I like to support my local coffee shop over a chain, but sometimes the ubiquity of a thing makes it more convenient for others. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's two really good points in there that you've made, and I guess the link in between the two of them is that communication piece, isn't it? Which we've talked about previously, haven't we? But it's that bit where leaders get so, I don't know what the word is really. They get carried away, don't they? With I'm the leader, I need to do I transmit the information, everyone else sits and takes notes and then goes away and does things. When actually, and as we talked about before, listening is the key component of communication. And the reason I think that links your two themes there is if you're going to value people, one of the best ways to do that is to listen to them, isn't it? Because then they feel valued and they feel like their opinions, their inputs, their contributions matter and are appreciated by their leader.
Right.
Yeah. So
and I think with empathy as leaders, we're just under such tremendous pressure to get things done, right? Mm-hmm. And we've gotten to where we are in a lot of cases because we've been an effective individual contributor. So as an individual contributor, what do I control? I control the things that are within my span of control, and I influence the things that are not. And as I rise through the levels of leadership, formalized leadership, then, I tend to do things my way because now I have increased span of control. Right. And so there's this natural inbuilt tendency to lean into that span of control in order to get the outcomes that we believe are there. But it's paradoxical because the more senior our formal leadership role is, the less we want to become the limiting factor in getting things done. So we have to get out of the control seat and hand that control to other people. It's one of the things I love about Turn the Ship Around, by David Marquette. It's such a great book on decentralized decision making and leadership, where the CEO, in his case, the sub captain, still has the final word on what we're going to go do. Right. But it's influenced so much by input from the people who are closest to the information. So leadership becomes about listening for the signals. Right. And then putting a plan together with folks based on those signals. Here's how we achieve the objective. So.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, with a bit of empathy, the vast majority of leaders, they're not doing that to be control freaks or.
Some of them are.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's why I said the majority, but there's always the few in there, aren't there, who are just egomaniacs. But I don't think most of them are doing it maliciously. I mean, I know I certainly didn't when I made that mistake myself way back when, however many years ago it was. Shush. But I think, there is that. I mean, a question I'd love to know the answer to, because you spent a lot more time in big companies than I have. I only did a few temp jobs there. Most of my career's been in small businesses. So that problem you mentioned earlier, where you hire these experts who really know their stuff and then you tell them what to do, that sort of weird dynamic. You see it a lot in small companies, which it's never really made sense to me. Like, if you're the business owner, you know how much those people are costing you. So why aren't you using their skills? Does it happen a lot in the big companies as well? Or is it more of a small business challenge, let's say?
I think it happens in all places. I think part of the challenge is that there's such a wide variety of how consultants do what they do. I was listening to the Acquired podcast recently, and they did an episode on Hermes. And Hermes has part of its core operating principles: never hire consultants, because they hired some consultants who were well-meaning, but they gave them the advice that would basically eviscerate what makes Hermes Hermes. And so part of the challenge is that a lot of consultants they know their stuff, but they come in with a recipe. And I still have yet to write my blog post on this thing, but frameworks are way more powerful than recipes, because what worked in one organization probably won't work in another organization. I mean, let's think about why a founder starts a business in the first place and doesn't go work for somebody else, because they think they can do something better or different, or they're innovating on a concept. So if I'm innovating on a concept, why would I do what everybody else is doing? So as a consultant, when you come in and you tell people what to do, you're not necessarily helping. If you're an SAP consultant and the customer is not ad for SAP, could be Dynamics or anybody else, right? But if you're an ERP consultant and you happen to be on a piece of software that the customer has already chosen, and you're going to help them be effective and efficient with that ERP system, well, then you probably do have a playbook to follow. And that will be its own bumpy ride. But at the end of it, you're probably going to have a successful ERP implementation. But when a consultant comes in with a playbook to your unique business, whether it's a big business or a small business, there's a good chance you're going to end up in that 70% of organizational transformation failures because it's not custom to you. So the minute they start customizing, they're listening to what you're trying to deal with. As a business leader, your job is to say, you're about to take away the distinctiveness of my organization with that approach. How do I get the benefit of that thing without losing my distinctiveness? And a lot of times a consultant will just be, I don't know, if you want that, I'm not your person. So, okay. So it happens everywhere. And if you also remember that large organizations are just a bunch of small organizations that all roll up into a bigger one, then we as a leader at whatever level in that organization, we're responsible for saying, like, this is where we're trying to get to. And I have to believe that any third party that comes in has loaded enough context and brought their framework in and can help me get there. And if they can't, or I don't believe they can, it's my duty to say, okay, thank you, I'm going to keep looking.
Yeah, I like the recipe analogy. Because for that to work, you're assuming that every organization has the same ingredients, aren't they? I'm straining your metaphor now, but
we call that extending it. It's only straining when it falls apart, and we try to hold it together.
Or nearly there, yeah.
Fair.
Interesting. All right, so one more question for you then on this subject. What is the best and most effective collaborating team that you've ever been part of?
A good question. You're good at good questions.
Thank you. Yeah.
I've been a part of so many different teams, and I don't know if I can say that one was the best or not the best. The challenge is isolating what made it the best, right?
That was going to be my next question.
I've been a leader of teams before, and for most of my career, I've been in formalized leadership positions. And even when I haven't been in a formal leader role, I've kind of been in the, okay, well, how do we get this? How do we solve this problem? And so I think the things that characterize high performing teams are where they have a clear and shared understanding of what the objective is. It's not that somebody has said this is the objective, but that we've pressure tested it, that we know that what people heard us say is actually what we said. And that gets back to this communication framework that I talk about. And then they're resourced to accomplish that. We know what the constraints are. It's sort of the basic project management things of like, this is the budget that we have to work in. I had an example. This isn't necessarily the best one, but it was an interesting one where we had to do a nationwide training plan, and we had a ridiculous number of people, but we didn't have the budget to get them all through this training program. It was literally back in the day when we used to ship anvil cases all around the country full of equipment, and we would set it up in a location, and then we would run a training class. And I had a team that did that for me. I had a curriculum team, and I had the training team. We got this requirement from the board. The leading indicator of revenue was how many people could we train in our dealer channel. Like, I don't know how we're going to do that because the math just doesn't work with the dollar amount. So I went and I got the head of the curriculum team, and I got the head of the training team. We pulled a couple of folks from their teams in, and we said, this is what we got. What do we do? Let's start with the options. Like, here's the constraints. And, these guys came up with some pretty great stuff. It required us to spend a little bit of money, but we reallocated budget. And at the end of the year, we had actually gotten 20% more than the already aggressive number of people to train. And it was solely because we understood what the goal was. We understood what our objective was and how it related to the leading indicator, or it was the leading indicator. And then we just said, okay, what options do we have? And we built a plan. And I think that's an example of high performance team and what helps it to be that way. It wasn't easy. It was not a foregone thing. We had a lot of risk. We didn't know if it would work. And so there's a lot of detail in there, but overarchingly, I think that's what makes teams work the best.
Okay. Makes sense. Didn't quite answer my question, but you answered the question I was going to ask you next, so I'll let you off.
Well, I answered the question I wish you had asked.
Yeah, it's very political of you. Yeah.
Well, the trouble is it's a hard question, right?
It is.
And it requires me to think back through 30 plus years of teams, right? And I've been on a lot of teams, and some of them have worked well, and some of them have not so well. So.
Okay, well, I won't hold it against you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, that's it, Dave. Thank you so much again for being here. Happy International Leadership Week.
I'll celebrate International Leadership Week every week if I can.
Yeah, well, I do anyway, pretty much. But right. It's good to have an excuse as well. Yeah,
that's right. Well, thank you for having me again.
Well, thanks for being here, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, you too.
Ira, welcome back to Leading with Integrity. It's lovely to have you back on the show again. It's been too long since we last spoke. I think it must have been last year, wasn't it? I can't even remember. It's flown by. It's been a blur for me the last year or so. Welcome. It's great to see you again.
Thank you so much, David, for having me. It's a great pleasure and a privilege to be here talking about these super important topics with you.
Well, the feeling's mutual, definitely. And it's International Leadership Week. The subject of the week is all about collaborating for success. So I'm going to ask you then, what is the secret to successful collaboration?
It's a big question.
Right.
I think one of there are so many. So where do I start? I think one of the key elements is being truthful to yourselves and others. And understanding that this is a topic that I have been talking a lot lately with leaders and, employees in all roles actually, is that, I don't know, some things in the world around us that has made us a bit scared to ask honest questions from one another. Like, we just a couple weeks back in our team, we were talking, people were sharing that, oh, I'm suspecting, David, that you're so busy that I don't dare to ask for your help. So every time we do that, we're actually I'm stepping into your zone and not respecting your boundaries. Whereas if I'm a responsible collaborator, I would come to you and ask, so David, do you have time to help me out with this one? And I could rely on the fact that you would be honest in the contact boundary with me. And if you don't have bandwidth, you would share that honestly, empathically, but also being honest with your boundaries that, no, sorry, this time I don't have bandwidth for that. Or you would. But oftentimes we make these assumptions and we dare to actually connect. And something that I have found really, really important is the courage to really connect, because people crave for the authentic contact with one another. And I think that's the secret for collaboration, is to enter in that with open mind, with curiosity, and being honest and transparent, and also being courageous of having the honest dialogue, talk about the real stuff. That's how I think that's the ultimate way for us to build trust and psychological safety in any collaboration. And I think we're all sharing that's a must-have factor for successful collaboration. So one thing that, when I heard about this topic that you wanted to discuss, I took quite a lot of time to think, so what do I want to emphasize? And I think having the courage to speak the truth and be truthful for yourself and others in a constructive and responsible way, and having also those discussions and dialogue on the hard matters, because some topics are not nice to have, but still to have those, I think that's the only way to build trust and to collaborate successfully.
It's a good point, definitely. I think there's a lot of focus in this sort of arena, if you like, on communication.
Yeah.
And I think a subset of that is the type of communication and the way you do it, isn't it? And I think that honesty point is really important, and particularly in the kind of world we live in now, where everything's very divisive and people take sides in everything, and fake news, all that political side of it. But also, everything's all go all the time. Workplaces are busy, they're hectic, they're complicated, and we don't always feel able to say, no, I can't help with that. I've got too much on my plate.
Exactly.
Because there's a stigma attached to that, almost like, oh, well, maybe you're not working hard enough, or you're not up to the job.
Yeah.
But actually, I think you're right. If we're going to collaborate with people effectively, we've got to be honest about what we're able to do, what we're not able to do, and then how we can collectively try and solve that.
Absolutely. And also to understand that even if we have these nice playbooks and we have the ground rules, this is how we want to collaborate. But if we don't take those into the daily actions or encounters or whatever it is, if we don't take that in, irrespective of my working role, it's just words on a PowerPoint or some document. But really having the courage, and I don't mean, with the honesty, I don't mean that if I'm having a bad day, I would just, throw it all up on you and say, yeah, because my personality is like that and I'm having a bad day, I'm giving myself an excuse to behave badly. No, not at all. But if I'm having the bad day, the responsible way for me is to share that with you, so you don't have to guess and all suspect and doubt and start to, make all the assumptions. I would just say, you know what, I'm not at my best because of that and that. Just wanted to let you know so you don't have to start guessing what's going on. So try to bear with me. How does that feel? If I were to say that to you, how does that make you feel, David?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely the better way to do it. It makes you feel more valued, doesn't it, as a colleague?
Exactly.
And I think if that's the sort of thing coming from a leadership position as well, so someone, is being quite vulnerable in a lot of ways, which is another buzzword for leadership these days, isn't it? But
it is. And I'm hoping that by saying that, I'm showing that I respect our relationship to the extent that I can be honest with you in a constructive way.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things, isn't it? One of those behaviors, if you like, that it's a really valuable thing to do between colleagues and contemporaries, say, but also it's quite effective from a leader as well. And I think it's, we can probably all think of an example of a leader we've worked for where it was just a constant guessing game. They would never tell you what they really thought. And you were just like, well, I don't know what's going on here. I'm apparently supposed to be a mind reader, and you never quite know what to expect from that sort of leader. And so you're always on edge and you don't do your best work. And it's the opposite of what we're talking about, really, isn't it?
Exactly. And have a think, how much of energy did that consume? And that's one of the things that we should be introducing to work life, is also, how does this encounter impact my energy level or your energy level? And often if it's like, something is then off, like we spend, or not even spend, but so much energy is consumed on that kind of vague signalings, or you need to read in between the lines. Why don't we make it easier for everyone to be more honest and transparent, and we don't have to guess? Because at the end of the day, that has an impact on our performance or capacity to think or perform. So, yeah, I think honesty is an integral part. Constructive honesty, responsible honesty is an integral part of successful collaboration.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, measured honesty. I think it's important anyway for leadership, isn't it? But it is one of those things. And again, the social media of it all, we don't need to know what you had for dinner last night or what you haven't, we don't need to know everything. Authenticity doesn't mean tell us all the things all the time, does it? It's just the stuff that's relevant, the stuff that's helpful, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's so freeing also. A topic that my intention in my trainings for leaders or SMEs or staff members from all roles is so that for everyone to be more of yourself, your authentic self at work in a constructive way. How freeing is that? Like, just to think of it, because we're so often, I don't know where it comes from, the need to play a role or being something else. I don't know if it's insecurity or is it what it is, but even in the tough situations, oftentimes when I prep for CEOs or C-level leaders, for example, to share with their staff some devastating news or because of financial situations, some unpleasant news, and how important it is for you to also share something. How does it make you feel? How is the situation for you? And the revelation for those leaders to understand that, I can say that and it does not make me less credible. It's just, you can see how the burden is lifting off their shoulders and they're like, oh, I can say that, really? And like, this is how you build trust and realistic hope for these people, to show that you're a human being. You don't need to, and you should not be a robot with no emotion, because that's not credible these days. We're so sensitive in sensing what's there. Is there something we need? Is he, what does he, and even when interviewing people in those events, when the news are shared, and asking them, what's your number one question? Oftentimes it is, I want to know how the leader feels about this. I want to know what he thinks or she thinks about this situation. What are his doubts, or what are her worries, or what keeps you up at night? And to have the guts to share that in a way that's suitable for yourself. Again, to know yourself, that requires that you know yourself, what's good for me, what do I want to share. But that's how you build the authentic connection with the people, even in the tough moments of work life.
Yeah, I think insecurity is certainly a big part of that, isn't it? That's why a lot of people do kind of put on this sort of work persona, isn't it? There's probably a bit about imposter syndrome in there, I'm sure. I think a lot of people, though, it's just because they don't know any other way of doing it.
Absolutely.
You just emulate the manager that you had, or what your CEO is doing, and because you're not taught any other way, so you copy the only reference you've got, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes when I coach leaders, you have to have who are in a position where they need to lay off people. And I've talked and asked to reflect, like, the biggest lessons learned. So often we think that because this topic is difficult for both of us, I'm just going to stick to the facts and make it as fast as possible to deliver news so that we can go our separate ways. But for any leader to understand that, as David, you said the words, to be treated with respect, that the number one thing that we should remember when delivering bad news is remember that the person wants to be treated with respect, even if you deliver bad news regarding their performance or their job or whatever it is. So it's as important to prep for how am I delivering this message than sticking to the facts. So I think that's just reflecting back on interviewing several CEOs or leaders. That's one of the key takeaways, that I should have spent more time listening to the person, asking how they feel, if there's something that needs clarification, and not just, be, well, I'm just here to deliver the news. This is how the process goes. Because definitely that does not make receiving the news to feel any more fair on the other person.
Yeah, it's true. I think the point about when it's bad news is particularly interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, we talked about insecurity and some of those other problems, but fear can play a role as well. I mean, leaders will have a fear in those situations. Maybe before they've got to the point of having to lay people off, maybe something's just not gone quite right, lost a contract, something like that. And the fear can take over really easily. You don't tell people. If we tell people we've lost this major contract, they're going to start quitting. It's going to be terrible news. Let's not make a big deal of it. And so that's it. No, never talk about it again.
Exactly.
The problem with that is people in the business will know it's happened anyway.
Exactly.
And it only takes one person and they'll tell everyone else, because that's just how organizations of people work, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then suddenly you've got a trust problem again. So back to the trust word, because now they're saying, well, why am I not hearing that from the leader? Why are they trying to keep this from me? They must realize I'm going to find out. I'm not valued here. They don't respect my intelligence. They don't respect me as a person. I'm going to leave. And this is the irony of it, isn't it? By trying to avoid that, you've created that.
Exactly. And the question there is, what if you think in the first place, would it have been better to hear it from you than someone else? And, the gossip's going on in the corridors or chats or some. But trust is an important element in the collaboration and as well. So if we can touch base on that. And it's an interesting topic because it's actually also related to our personality. And one of my favorite questions to ask a group of leaders is, what's your relationship to trust? Is trust something that needs to be earned? Or do you start the person, for example, when first meeting, what's the level of trust that typically is natural for you? And it's so interesting to realize that, do I trust the people, or is trust something that needs to be earned, is related to our personality? And for leaders to be aware of that is such an important thing. So if you think, how is it for you? Do you trust people from the get-go, or is it something that requires time and evidence and is something to be earned? Because the matter of the fact is that people who are trusted perform better. That's a fact. That's a proven fact. And also oftentimes in the work life, if there's trust in collaboration, things tend to move smoother, faster. Decisions are made more effectively, and also it feels good from both parties to be trusted, or there's a shared trust between us. And because trust is such a big word, we often introduce this triangle of trust. So what are the elements of trust to understand? And some leaders also use this when having a difficult conversation to actually provide an unbiased, objective viewpoint, for example, for giving feedback. So number one element of trust is the personality. And that happens in the first meeting of the person. Oftentimes we start to create intuitively, can I trust you? How are your motives compared to mine? What are your values? Can I trust? Can I sense that there's trust in here? And then the second part is actually the competence. In the work life, it means, for example, and that is something that's built oftentimes through time. So can I trust that if you say that you will provide me with this deliverable by time X, can I trust your word that you will do that? And the third part is the cooperation, the collaboration part. How does it feel to work with you? And if either one of these three elements, personality, competence, and collaboration or cooperation, is jeopardized, you can sense that trust is not there.
Yeah, I do really like that framework, I have to say. I also quite like, we started this conversation on the topic of honesty, didn't we?
Yeah.
I quite like the interplay between trust and honesty.
Yeah.
And another way of describing trust that I've heard that kind of resonates as well is the idea of trust as a spectrum or a scale. Because I think, again, we all quite often fall into a trap, don't we, of trust is on or off, it's binary.
Yeah.
It's actually not, is it? There's a big scale there. Like, would I trust a stranger to watch my coffee while I go to the
Yeah.
toilet or something? Yes, probably, maybe. Would I trust them with my car keys? No, definitely not.
Yeah,
So it's, and I do find that quite interesting in the work context as well.
absolutely.
And as for the question of whether it's earned or not, yeah, this one I struggle with. And I think context plays a really big part in that. To put it in the context of my own experience, as an employee, I 100% believed that trust had to be earned by my leader.
Mm,
But as a leader, I kind of see it the other way around.
that's
I
a very
think
good point.
leaders have to be the first to trust,
Yeah,
right? And if you've hired the person already, then you're trusting them to a point
Yeah.
by default almost.
Yeah.
But if you can't then trust them to go and say, do their job,
Yeah.
I don't think the problem's with the employee at that point, to be
that's
honest.
true. That's true. Yeah.
And it's reciprocal as well, of course. Like if you don't give it, you won't get it. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Trust is tricky, isn't it? I mean, it can also be quite fragile, I think. It's very easily lost, but not so easily gained. But I think another kind of assumption or trap that we all tend to fall into is that once trust is gone, that's it. You'll never trust that person again.
Exactly.
But, I've had a few conversations like this with trust experts who all they do is study trust and talk about trust. And I'm reliably informed that it is possible to rebuild it. And I think for me, as you were hinting at just now, the first step to rebuilding it has to be surely acknowledging why it's been lost and taking responsibility for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just, there's a great link to psychological safety, because at the core of psychological safety, trust and psychological safety are, I think, interconnected. Trust, in my opinion, is oftentimes between two people, and the psychological safety is the wider and larger expansion of that. But if we think of the core elements of building psychological safety, instead of searching for who's there to blame, we twist it to what can we learn about this? And I think that's why it's such an important element of rebuilding the trust. What can we learn from this? And are we willing to work this together? And I think that's the thing that the two people need to establish, is they're willing and wanting to reestablish that.
Yeah, it's so important. And not just for trust, I mean, for collaboration, effectively.
Yes, exactly.
And the output, the result, the longevity of the team even. Absolutely. So many different things we could link to that, I'm sure.
Absolutely. The scattered work or the new ways of working that we're all faced with. How do we collaborate? And what if it's not just a smooth ride? Do we have the courage to address that? What went well? What can we learn from this? I think one of the elements that the work life or the life that we live in these days is asking for willingness to accept that we're all human beings. We're erroneous. We make mistakes. There's no such thing as a perfect encounter between two human beings that are not rational all the time. So accepting the unfinished business in us as human beings, but also in the situation that we live in. I think it's so freeing for everyone if we enter it understanding that I'm not 100% right. What if you're 100% right? Or we are 80% right altogether. Is that enough?
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, for the purpose of successful collaboration, I think not just from a leadership point of view, but for anyone who's trying to be part of a successful team, it's having that grace for each other, isn't it? It's forgiveness almost. It's acknowledging the fact that we're all people, we're all humans, we're all imperfect. And if we're going to work together effectively, you've got to make allowances for someone to have a bad day or something outside of work to have an impact on their productivity that morning, or, whatever it might be. And I think, again, it's something that gets lost in the workplace, isn't it? We're also at each other's throats sometimes, but it does get lost. And I think teams and collaboration suffer as a result?
When we talk about successful collaboration, I think it requires everyone to understand their role and everyone to understand their role or impact irrespective of their role. And what I mean by that is, even if I think let's say a Teams meeting, I don't have my camera on and I think, for some reason, I don't want to take part in the conversation. It could be that I'm not interested in the topic, or I'm just afraid that if I open share my thoughts, it's going to jump on my plate and I have, too much already, or whatever the reason. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to, look other way and maybe concentrate on some other stuff and think that I'm not part of that. But actually, I am a huge part of the collective experience if I decide that I'm not contributing. So one thing is to understand that even selecting a passive role is an active impact to the collective experience. So when I am part of the group, I do play a role, whether I like it or not. And if I'm going to jump out, I should be responsible in a way that I'm sharing that with the rest of the group, so they are not expecting my input. But I think that's such an important to understand that everyone does play a role.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, the Zoom generation, I think definitely that is an impact, isn't it? Because it is so easy to just turn your camera off. But actually, like, the assumption in other people's minds probably is, well, they're not paying attention.
Exactly.
They're not interested in what we're talking about. They're probably not even there. They've gone to make a coffee or something. And
exactly.
So I think you're right. If you are, it's Zoom etiquette almost, isn't it? Like, if you're going to do that, tell people why before you do it, and when you'll be back, or when you turn it back on again, or whichever. So again, it's back to that honesty. It's back to communication. Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said as well about managing those expectations and making sure everyone understands from the off, what who's doing what and why and when, and all those other words that begin with W.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I think that's all we've probably got time for, really. Well, I mean, I could carry on for the rest of the afternoon, probably.
Yeah, me too. We need to schedule another one.
Definitely. Yeah, we should talk again soon. Well, thank you so much for coming back. It's not many guests that have been on more than once. It's a growing number, but not many at the moment. So thank you. Really appreciate your time. And it was lovely chatting collaboration with you.
Thank you so much, David. Super interesting topic. And as I said to you before, a great moment of being present and talking about stuff that is super important, that work life, but we rarely have time to share our views in the busy work life. So hopefully this is useful for all of you out there.
Indeed. And happy International Leadership Week as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now let's get into the quick fire round, if you like. Denzel, I think we're going to start with you. Given the industry that you work in, tech has quite a reputation, I think, for innovative working practices, for new collaborative working methods, ways of developing ideas, and just innovation generally. I think the rise of Agile is a really good example of that. So with your experience in that industry, what do you think is the secret to successful collaboration?
I really do think it's the empowerment and allowing people to know that you have faith in them to do the right things without micromanagement. I also feel like it's very important for creating a safe space where everyone feels like they can speak up and say what they're thinking and push back. I think that is really important because you don't want to be surrounded by yes men or people who are just doing whatever you say, because you want the best for your company. You want to challenge what practices and see what is the best way to move forward. So I definitely think it's that. We are very much trying to embrace all of the principles around future of work. And so we are remote, we're asynchronous. We have meetings only when we really need them, when there are things that you just cannot communicate. And then sometimes we'll do in-person events depending on what is going on at the company.
And Dave, we've heard some great thoughts from you already, but if you could summarize in a sentence what successful collaboration means, what the secret sauce is, What would that sound like, do you think?
Clear shared understanding of the goal, a understanding of the resources that we have available, including the uniqueness of the people that are going to deliver it, and a commitment to clear communication through the process and monitoring the plan against the result. Like, how are we doing? Are we on our way to it? That's maybe 3 sentences. Sorry.
That'll do. Close enough. Yeah. Great. Joey, from your background in an Olympic team sport, it's hard to imagine that you or the team that you were a part of would have got anywhere near as far as you did if you couldn't all work together. So from that experience, what's your perspective on what makes collaboration successful?
I think where being in an environment where every single person feels as though they are contributing and there's clarity in their role, what's expected from them, and in how to communicate among one another. I think the most common thing I see or hear from businesses and from teams is there's a lack of clarity. We have values. We know what our values are. What do those values actually look like in action? And can we define those so specifically that we know exactly what it looks like?
Yes, I like that, I must say. And it's something I hear fairly frequently about when you talk about values. Can you explain, I don't know, say the last decision you made in terms of your values and how those values informed that decision? And if you can't do that, then either you made the decision wrong, probably in the nicest possible way, or your values aren't a correct reflection of your business and the way you conduct it. And I think that is quite an interesting way of connecting the two things. It's maybe a helpful exercise to go through as well, because it forces you to live those values or change them so they reflect who you are and what you're doing.
Absolutely. If you're constantly making decisions that don't align with those values, then maybe they're the wrong values.
George, I really like your 5 C's of trust: character, commitment, competence, connection, and communication. I think those are all crucial factors in trust and in leadership, to be honest. And the way that you speak about them really shows that it's lessons learned from a high pressure environment where collaboration is essential. So what would you say then is that secret to successful collaboration?
Fundamentally, you're going to collaborate with somebody most effectively when you really have a high trust relationship, right? So if you have shared values and you're operating, living up to whatever your responsibilities are in the collaboration, right? And that you're both committed to the outcome of the collaboration. That's important. And that what you bring to the collaboration is a high level of skill and experience, the competence. And then the connection that the other person that you're collaborating with feels like you understand who they are and what they're about, what their story is, and you respect them and understand them. And they feel understood. And then finally, that there's good communication. So those 5 pillars apply directly to the ability to work in a team setting and collaborate.
That's more or less what I thought you were going to say.
When you have a hammer, every question sounds like a nail.
Well, no, but it fits though, so it's okay. It makes sense. It's not the square peg in the round hole problem, definitely. Yeah. And last but not least, Ira, what's the secret to success in collaboration in 2 sentences or less?
Successful collaboration, it looks like people are enjoying their time. They're not afraid to have difficult conversations, but they trust in the goodwill of the people collaborating. And everyone understands their role and is willing to participate, to contribute to the best outcome of the group.
Good.
I saw a picture of group working there. So you asked, how does it look like?
Yeah, it's just people sitting around a desk. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually,
I like it. It's good.
This might be for someone controversial, but I'm still going to share it. I saw those people in the same physical location. So I know this is a hot topic, but still, in my picture, they were in a physically same location and they were present.
Yes, it is controversial for some, but I think that's more a symptom of your own working experience. And anyone who has been in the workplace before COVID would probably all have that same image pop to our minds. So yeah, I don't think that's a negative reflection necessarily. It's just...
and it was my honest reflection. So.
Yeah, no worries. There we have it. There are so many factors to achieving effectively collaborating teams and fostering that good and essential teamwork in your organization. But as we've seen, there are a few core behaviors that are not only central to collaboration for success, but to leadership itself. And as is so often the case, they're relatively simple ideas, but not always easy to achieve. Easy to understand, difficult to master. Thank you for being with us today, listener or viewer, if you're with us on YouTube. Thank you again to my guests today, Dave, Denzel, George, Ira, and Joey. Did that in alphabetical order, didn't I? Whoops. Oh, well. Anyway, listener, if you would like to learn more about International Leadership Week, or perhaps attend one of the events that the Institute is running this week, then I have popped a link in the episode description below. So you can click on that and find out more. You can register. At least 2 of the events are free. I know that because I'm going to them myself. You'll also find links to my own website and LinkedIn profile. Please do reach out if you'd like to have a chat about leadership or learn more about anything we've talked about today. And finally, I've also put links to each of today's guests' websites in there as well. I do encourage you to visit all of those pages to learn more about them and what they do, because they're all amazing people and great leaders with much wisdom to offer. And that's pretty much all we have time for today. Stick with me for the rest of our daily episodes this week. Tune in again tomorrow when I will be chatting about the art of storytelling, stand-up comedy, and the power of effective communication with former school superintendent and educator Ray Lauk. Then on Wednesday, I will be chatting with retired US Navy Master Chief Raymond Kemp about his experiences and lessons in leadership and teamwork from a 30-plus year career in the Navy. On Thursday, I speak with keynote leadership speaker, coach, facilitator, trainer, and former manager at Disney World, Summer Jelinek, about a management career at Disney and beyond, about her new book, what inspired her interest in leadership, and much more besides. And finally then, to round out the week, bring it all to a close and hopefully tie some of these threads together, no promises though, on Friday I'll be doing a shorter solo episode reflecting on International Leadership Week 2024, what my key takeaways are and what I've learned from some of the events that I'll be attending myself this week. And for the first time, as it's a special week, you will be able to join the live premiere of each episode this week on YouTube, and we can all watch together if you like, or tune in the usual way and listen or watch whenever it is that's convenient for you. Thanks again for joining me today. Hope you'll be here again tomorrow, and until then, be a leader, not a boss.